Welcome to Beat Diabetes. On today's program, we'll be looking at the question of time. It's one thing to turn back diabetes when you first cross over that line. But what about people who've been diabetics for 10, 15, or 20 years? Can they also beat diabetes? And is there any chance they might even be able to do it in less than 6 months? We'll look at that, and we'll also consider the question, could a vegan get diabetes, or does their diet prohibit even its possibility? Coming up. Okay. Another comment. Hi, Dennis. After 13 plus years of being diabetic, speaking of his wife, with 1,000 milligram metformin, apparently every day, my wife finally beat diabetes. 13 years is a long time to be diabetic. She was taking 1,000 grams of metformin, and he says she finally beat it. This morning, she had her doctor's appointment. Her A1C came out at 5.1 without metformin. So she dropped the metformin and ended up with a 5.1 A1C after 13 years. Well, it's amazing to me how many testimonies we get that are similar to that. You know, there's two kinds of diabetics we frequently hear from. One would be the ones that just got diagnosed with diabetes, and they're scared to death, and they're looking for answers, and they type in how to beat diabetes. They come across my channel, and they start watching, and a few months later, they've got victory. And that's wonderful. But the other type we hear from are those like this guy who says, my wife was 13 years as a diabetic, wasn't getting any answers, wasn't getting any better, nothing was working. Start watching your channel, start doing what you have recommended, and now it's 5.1, and she even doesn't take metformin anymore. Well, how cool is that? Just absolutely wonderful. And folks, we're just hearing about this all the time. I think it's one of the best kept secrets in the health world is just how many people are getting free from diabetes and high A1C scores as a result of some very simple things like a low-carb diet and time-restricted eating. Another comment. Both myself and my wife being born and raised in poor Bangladeshi families. Amazing. This person grew up in Bangladesh. We've never had access to sugar or candy or so forth. Well, that's an advantage. And he says those were limited to people who could afford it. So they were from a poor, not that there's no candy in Bangladesh, but from him probably growing up in a village and his wife, and just couldn't afford candy, couldn't afford any kind of sweets, so very poor. We almost never ate outside our home, so didn't go to restaurants. Our food was mainly rice and lentil soup and some mixed vegetables curry. We ate occasional homemade Indian paneer, and that's about it. So a very simple diet, and they stayed non-diabetic on that diet. Even though it's got a lot more carbs than I'm exactly comfortable with, it did not cause them to become diabetic. Yet, this person says, after 5 years, which was 13 years ago, 5 years after coming to America at the age of 30, my wife developed diabetes. Myself, after 22 years in America at the age of 49, I developed diabetes earlier this year. The epidemic of diabetes is probably due to a combination of many lifestyle factors in our modern society, diseases of civilization. Absolutely. You know, when Western influence has come to a primitive society, a village society, there are so many benefits that Western society and Western influence can bring. Toilets in the house is one thing. And an electric cooking stove, and cars, and microwave ovens, and just on and on, medical technologies. When Western influence comes to a society, it brings a lot of blessings, a lot of very nice things. But one little nasty fellow that hitchhikes right along with it is diabetes. And it's a result of the Western diet. We Westerners love sugar. We have fallen in love with sugar. We want sugar on everything. We want it in our yogurt. We want it in our ketchup. We want it in our cereal. We want it everywhere and on everything. And generally, when the low-fat movement really gained steam, they made up for the tastelessness of a low-fat diet by just jamming in a little extra sugar. They were certain that the guilty party, the villain, was the fat. So we're going to make it low, and then to make up for that, we're going to add some extra sugar, because we all know sugar's fine. Sugar's not a problem. So we'll cut the fat, we'll add the sugar, and we created a nation of diabetics and pre-diabetics. I mean, they're everywhere in America and all over the world. So somebody has called this diabetes and heart disease the diseases of civilization, and it comes directly from the way that we eat. All right. Well, here is a criticism, and I think it must come from somebody who lives in a different country, because I had a little bit of a hard time understanding their English, but I think I pretty well have it down, have it figured out. I think he's speaking to me and saying, well, if you have an A1C of around 5, in fact, you never had diabetes at all, then all the details based on you had no meaning for other diabetics. It only matters when you are a real diabetic, and then you get a substantial relief on a number. So basically saying, what right do you have in trying to counsel diabetics, trying to encourage diabetics when you've got an A1C in the low 5s? Well, whether I'm diabetic or not really makes no difference, because clearly what I'm advocating is something that Dr. Jason Fung advocates, and Dr. Ken Berry and Dr. Berg, and so many of these, and a lot of these guys are not diabetics themselves, but the diet still works. So even if I'm not, it still works. But he's saying, well, your tests don't really relate to us at all. But keep in mind, I can get up to over 200 with eating a single potato, so I clearly have some issues. But the way I see it, what I represent to you, and by the way, you diabetics, you're my people. I'm one of you. We are one. But I represent the positive side of what you can become if you're not there yet. And some of you have gotten there, and some of you have gone beyond me, and thank God for that. But I represent what you can become. When I was a kid, I sometimes saw on the cartoon shows that I watched on TV, they would show some character trying to make a decision, and he had a little devil cartoon character on one shoulder and a little angel character on the other shoulder, and they'd both be talking to him. And the devil character, with his horns and looking rather sinister, would say, go ahead, do this thing that you're wanting to do. You'll love it. It's good for you. And then the angel would be saying, no, you don't want to do that. You'll get in trouble. And the devil would give his advice, and the angel would give his advice. And, the cartoon character in between with the devil and the angel on his shoulders would be trying to decide what to do. Well, I represent that angel, the good guy on the shoulder, telling you, you can see victory. You can win this thing. You can beat diabetes, but you're going to need to make some decisions. And, it's not even all that hard. I mean, granted, there is some sacrifice involved. I'd be lying if I didn't say there was. But, once you get this figured out and you find out there's a lot of things you can eat, even desserts that you can eat, it's not that bad. And I do not go around bemoaning my, destiny as a potential diabetic. So, yeah, my A1C is not diabetic, nor has it ever been as far as I know, because I caught it early before it ever had a chance to get there. My fasting glucose, as far as I know, never even got up to 126. It was always below that, but I definitely had some metabolic problems. And at one time, I passed out from blood glucose going too low because my blood sugar was bouncing way too high and then going way too low, up and down, up and down. I was headed for severe diabetes, which my mom had, lost both of her legs. And when she died of a heart attack, they tested her blood sugar. At that time, when she went into the hospital, it was over 500. And then she died of a heart attack shortly after that. So she had it bad. I was following in her footsteps. But I just took a step back and said, whoa, I'm not going that way if I can help it. and prayed to God and asked Him to help me, and He showed me a few things, and I share it with you and say, if this will work for you, great. Talk to your doctor about it. So if you want to say, well, Dennis, you're not a diabetic, I don't think you've ever been a diabetic, depends on your definition. If I took a blood sugar control test where they gave me the sweet, syrupy stuff and they wanted to watch how high my blood sugar shot up, I'd be right up there with most diabetics, I would guess, although I don't know because I've never had one. But my A1C is not, and by the grace of God, I trust it will never be in the diabetic range, nor my fasting glucose. Okay, so one more comment. This is a somewhat of a long one, but it's a good one. I just want to thank you for this channel. This man says, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in February of 2008. It's been a while. Since then, till February 2020, I've suffered a lot mentally and physically. I lost my father to the disease in 2018. My A1C was hovering around 13. My blood glucose in February 2020 was as high as 573. So we're talking big numbers here. And this is not something that just came on him. He's been diabetic for 12 years. And now it's worse than ever. He says, I visited the doctor. He prescribed 6 different medicines, told me to come back in 15 days. If there's no improvement, I'd have to start with insulin. The ironic part is I've been vegan for the last 1.5 years. And that is ironic, and it's interesting because vegans will tell you, if you're a vegan, you cannot get diabetes. It's not even possible. Because everybody knows, according to the vegans, that eating meat is what causes diabetes. All that saturated fat goes into your cells, and they get loaded with fat, and you can't take any more of anything in there, and so you're diabetic. But if you're a vegan, it's not possible. Whether you eat candy or whether you eat anything, as long as there's no animal fat, no saturated fat, no animal products, you can't be. Well, he was a vegan for 1.5 years and had blood glucose over 500 and had an A1C over 13 or hovering around 13. So he started Googling. He found several of us, the Diet Doctor, who has some good information. He bumped into my channel. Also a doctor named Robert Siwes, who's also promoting low-carb diets. So he says, I wish to wholeheartedly thank you for my knowledge and motivation to try a new food habit, a new diet, which has completely transformed me. By May, my A1C was 5.8. February, 573, A1C of around 13. By May, it's 5.8, which is going to be probably fasting glucose around 100 or so. My triglycerides earlier were around 900. And the doctor was surprised how I was even alive with that high of triglycerides. He says now they're at 235. Still high, but a whole lot better than 900. I've never felt better. I wish I had all that knowledge earlier. He says, I'm not sure if my neuropathy will go away, but I'm calm, living a better life now. Thank you once again from the bottom of my heart. Just wonderful. And we pray that his neuropathy will go away as well. When he slashed his carbs, his A1C went into free fall. And it was soon down into the 5s after being diabetic for years and years, 13 years. 12 years, from 2008 to 2020. Well, you have to, number one, know what to do. For a long time, he just didn't know. And then 2, you have to have the motivation to do it. We hope that this channel is one of the means to help you in those 2 areas. Number 1, know what to do, which is to go to a low-carb diet. And number 2, have some motivation to do it. And one of the reasons I post interviews with diabetics is to show you, yeah, this stuff really works, and to give you some motivation. That can be you. In fact, the Indian young man named Mohit told me that when he was first diagnosed with diabetes, he saw these interviews and said, I want to be on there giving my story one of these days. And sure enough, he was. And it's been a very popular interview that I did with him. So the motivation, the knowledge. Motivation, knowledge, and of course, the grace of God. Well, that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed that and you found it helpful. If so, give it a thumbs up. And be sure and subscribe to this channel if you're interested in seeing more videos like this one, like the interviews and all the other stuff that we do. Then click on the bell icon so you'll be notified every time we post a new video. God bless. See you again soon.